Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into something that might be pretty personal for a lot of you.
Hmm.
It's the long-term effects of growing up with emotionally immature parents.
Right.
We're going to be looking at some really insightful excerpts from Lindsay C. Gibson's book,
Yes.
Recovering from Emotionally Immature Parents. And we're hoping that by the end of this deep dive,
Yeah.
you'll have a bunch more tools and those aha moments
Right.
so that you can understand your experiences and take back your emotional autonomy.
It's a really common experience
Absolutely.
that a lot of people have where they just feel unseen and unheard, even as adults.
Yeah. So let's just jump right into it.
Yeah.
What does it actually mean to have an emotional immature parent?
Right.
Like, we always hear this term EI parent, but what does that actually mean?
Right. Yeah.
It's more than just them being difficult.
Yeah. It's more than just being
Mm.
difficult. It really boils down to a lack of emotional awareness and responsiveness. These parents struggle to connect with their children on a deeper emotional level because they're sort of stuck in their own world.
Yeah, it's like they're emotionally miles away even when they're physically present.
Exactly.
And that distance can cause a lot of those long-term consequences that we're going to be talking about.
Exactly.
And, Gibson does a really good job in her book of
Yeah.
not just giving us like a clinical definition.
Right.
She really brings it to life with examples.
Yes, she does a great job of using very vivid examples that really hit home.
Hmm.
Like, for example, the parent who throws a tantrum because their adult child didn't visit them enough.
Right.
And it's always for them.
Yeah, like it's all about them.
It really highlights how their needs take center stage.
Yeah, their world revolves around them and everyone else is just an extra in their movie.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's not that they're intentionally trying to be bad parents or anything like that.
Right.
It's that they have all of this unresolved baggage that prevents them from being emotionally available for their children.
Yeah. And that can really have a huge impact.
Yet that lack of emotional responsiveness
Yeah.
is really impactful.
It's like emotional neglect isn't always about physical absence. It
Yeah.
can be about the absence of that empathy,
Exactly.
that deeper connection.
It's a very subtle form of neglect.
Yeah. And so Gibson outlines these 9 key characteristics of EI parents in her book, and we're not going to have time to go through all of them today.
Yeah.
But let's pick a few that really stood out to us.
Sure.
Ones that, our listeners might be like, oh my gosh, that's my mom, that's my dad.
Yeah, for sure. One of the most common characteristics is this constant communication breakdown.
Ugh. Yes.
Have you ever felt like you just can't have a genuine, open, and honest conversation with your parent?
Oh gosh.
It's
Yeah.
like you're always walking on eggshells.
You're constantly worried you're going to say the wrong thing.
Exactly. And you're always worried about saying the wrong thing, so you just end up shutting down.
Yeah, you just shut down or say what you think they want to hear.
Yeah. And because of that, you never really feel seen or heard by them.
Mm-hmm.
And this lack of communication often goes hand in hand with another characteristic, which is control and manipulation.
Ugh. Yeah.
And this is, you know,
Not about healthy boundaries.
not about healthy boundaries. It's about using guilt trips,
Right?
shame, anger even,
Yeah.
to try and get you to put their needs above yours.
It's like they're directing a play,
Exactly.
and you're just an actor following their script.
Yeah, and you have no room to improvise.
You have no room for improvisation.
You have no space for your own needs or your own feelings.
Right.
That's such a great analogy.
And then when you try to break free
Yeah,
and express how you really feel,
right.
then we run into another hallmark of the EI parent,
Yes.
which is lack of empathy.
Yes, the inability to understand or validate your experience.
Yeah, you're speaking 2 different languages. Like,
Right.
you're pouring your heart out to them and they're like,
Yeah.
get over it. Or they just give you a blank stare.
Oh, you're so sensitive.
Right. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
Like, hello.
It can be so frustrating.
Yeah.
And it makes you feel so alone.
And invalidated
Yes, absolutely.
in your own emotional world.
Yeah.
And this pattern just repeats over and over again
Yeah, sadly.
throughout childhood and into adulthood.
And into adulthood.
And so Gibson takes us even a step further.
Yes.
And she identifies 4 types of emotionally immature parents.
Right.
And this is where it gets really interesting because it helps us to see the nuances
And nuances, yeah.
of how EI can manifest
In different ways, yeah.
in different ways. So she categorizes them as emotional, driven, passive,
Right.
and rejecting.
Right.
And each of these has its own unique way of
Mhm.
expressing those immature behaviors.
Right.
So let's break it down a little bit,
Yeah.
starting with the emotional parent.
Okay.
What are some of the telltale signs
Right.
that we might be dealing with this type of parent?
So the emotional parent is all about drama.
Ooh, fun.
Everything is a big deal. They often overreact to even minor situations.
Oh, yeah.
And they'll use their emotional outbursts to control and manipulate those around them.
Yeah.
They might be masters at playing the victim.
Oh, yeah.
And they need constant sympathy and attention.
So it's like living in a perpetual hurricane.
It really is.
Never knowing when that emotional storm is going to hit.
Yeah, and it's exhausting for the people around them.
It's exhausting. Now contrast that with the driven parent.
Okay, so the driven parent is all about achievement and keeping busy.
Oh, yeah.
They might apply that same driven, goal-oriented mindset
Right.
to their family life.
Yeah.
So they might be very successful in their careers, but they struggle to connect emotionally with their children.
Right. It's like they don't know how to turn it off.
Exactly.
Like, okay, work is done, now I'm home.
Right. And they often have very high expectations for their kids.
And it's all very conditional.
Yes, very conditional.
Like you're only worthy of love if you get good grades or go to a good college. Exactly.
Or get the right job or whatever it is they value.
Yeah, they're very focused on external achievements.
Mm.
And it sends this message that you're only worthy if you achieve what they want you to achieve.
Which is so messed up.
It is very damaging.
Now, the passive parent
Okay.
might seem like they're nicer.
Right on the surface, they might seem more easygoing,
Mm-hmm.
but that passivity can actually be just as harmful.
Yeah.
Because they avoid conflict at all costs.
Right.
Even when it means neglecting their child's needs or failing to protect them from the other parent.
Like the good cop, bad cop dynamic.
Exactly.
But even the good cop
Yeah.
isn't really providing that emotional support.
Well, not really stepping up.
Yeah, they're just kind of there.
Right.
But not really there.
It's this silent complicity
Right.
that can leave the child feeling invisible.
And unsupported.
Yeah.
Then finally we have the rejecting parent.
Yeah, the rejecting parent is emotionally distant,
Mm-hmm.
critical,
Mm-hmm.
and dismissive of their child's feelings and needs.
They
Yeah.
really prioritize their own comfort and autonomy.
It's like push and pull.
Yes.
Like they're there, but they're not emotionally unavailable.
Yeah.
So confusing.
Yes. And it creates this feeling that you're never quite good enough.
Yes.
You never quite measure up.
And it's not for lack of trying on your part.
Exactly.
Like you are bending over backwards.
Yeah, and it can lead to these deep-seated feelings of rejection and unworthiness that can last a lifetime.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, it's important to remember that these categories aren't mutually exclusive.
Right.
A parent can exhibit traits from multiple types.
Yeah, absolutely. It's more about
Recognizing patterns.
yes, recognizing the patterns in your own experience.
Right. And not necessarily labeling your parents.
Right. This isn't about pointing fingers or anything. It's just about understanding the dynamics that shaped your relationships.
Yeah.
And something that really helped me connect the dots with all this
Was when Gibson brought in this concept of the drama triangle.
oh, yeah.
Where people can fall into these roles.
Like the victim, the rescuer, and the persecutor.
Yeah. And it's so fascinating to see how EI parents will cast their children
Yes.
in specific roles within their own dramas.
It's like they're assigning you a part in their play.
Right. Without even asking if you want to be in the cast.
And you had no choice in the matter.
Yeah. So, for example, like an emotional parent might play the victim,
Right.
Constantly seeking sympathy and support.
Yeah.
And then they cast their kid as the rescuer.
Right.
And the kid's like responsible for managing their emotions.
Yeah. Always trying to keep the peace.
And keep everything calm.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure.
And then the driven parent might be like the hero.
Right. Always striving for success.
Right.
And they see their kid as a sidekick.
Yeah.
Who is just supposed to follow their lead.
And live up to their expectations.
Yes.
And that can really stifle a child's
Their individuality.
individuality and sense of self.
Yeah. It's all about maintaining the parent's image and control.
Yeah.
Even if it comes at the expense of the child's authentic self.
And then the passive parent, as we were saying earlier, often takes on that role of the bystander.
Right.
Allowing the more dominant parent to take the lead.
Right.
While remaining emotionally detached.
Yeah. They're not the aggressor,
Right.
but they're complicit
Yeah.
in the dysfunction.
And then the rejecting parent might be like the independent, self-sufficient one.
Right.
And then they cast their child as the needy, burdensome one.
Yes. And it's a way for them to justify their lack of responsiveness.
Yeah.
Right. Because they need to take care of themselves.
Right.
They have their own life.
Yeah.
And you're just a burden.
Right. And so it's important to remember that these roles can be fluid.
Yes. Very fluid.
And they often shift depending on the situation.
Yes. Absolutely.
So again, it's not about assigning labels.
Right.
It's about recognizing those recurring patterns.
And seeing how they affect your relationships.
Yes, and I know we've covered a lot.
Yeah, we have.
And it can be really heavy to think about
Absolutely.
and to recognize these things in your own life.
Yeah, it's a lot to process.
But if you're resonating with any of this,
Right.
you're not alone.
We're not alone.
And this is about understanding.
Yes.
And not about blaming.
It's not about blame. It's about awareness.
Yeah, and it brings us to a really interesting question that comes up a lot when we're talking about EI parents, which is, why do we keep trying to have a close relationship with them, even when we're repeatedly disappointed?
Right. Why do we keep going back?
And then we keep going back.
It's a question that a lot of people have.
It really is.
And it's understandable.
Yeah.
Because we all have this deep yearning for connection.
Validation.
Yes.
Yeah.
For love.
Absolutely. We were talking before the break about that deep yearning we have to be close to our parents.
Yeah.
Even when they're emotionally immature.
Yeah. It's like this primal need we all have to be validated.
Yeah. And be loved.
And loved unconditionally.
Especially by our parents.
Right, by our parents.
Yeah.
You know, we want to believe that despite their flaws, they have our best interests at heart.
Right.
That they love us. And, you know, maybe if we just try hard enough, we can finally experience that fulfilling parent-child relationship that we crave.
Yeah, we all want that.
Yeah, we all want it. But,
you
know, I think we've all seen those movies where, you know, the emotionally distant parent finally has that breakthrough.
Yeah.
And they express their love and
they change.
Right.
And everything's happy.
Yeah, happily ever after.
But the reality is that with EI parents, those breakthroughs rarely happen.
Rarely happen.
Because they have these deeply ingrained defense mechanisms that make genuine closeness nearly impossible. They might stay busy all the time. They might project blame onto others. They might even be envious of your successes.
And all of these defenses, they protect them from emotional intimacy. But sadly, they lead to repeated heartbreak.
For the kid.
For the child, exactly.
So it's like they're wired to protect themselves from being vulnerable, which then prevents them from connecting with other people.
On a deeper level.
On an emotional level.
Exactly.
So I think it's important to recognize that those limitations are in the parent. And not in us.
It's not you, it's them.
Yeah, it's not me.
Right.
And we don't have to keep trying to fit into a mold that doesn't exist.
Exactly. You can't change
And that is so freeing to realize. Like, it takes the pressure off of trying to fix them or earn their love.
You don't have to earn their love.
Yeah, you don't.
And that's a big realization.
Yeah, it really is.
It's a huge step towards reclaiming your power.
Right.
And creating healthier relationships.
Both with ourselves and with other people.
Absolutely.
So this brings us to those powerful strategies that Gibson outlines in her book. For taking back your power.
These are real strategies that you can start implementing right away.
Yeah, these aren't just, vague suggestions.
Yeah, she gives concrete action steps.
Yeah, and one of the most important strategies, which we've touched on a little bit already, is setting boundaries.
Yes, setting boundaries is crucial.
So let's unpack that a little bit.
Okay.
When it comes to dealing with EI parents, what does that actually look like?
In practice.
In practice.
Yeah, it starts with recognizing that you're not obligated to meet their unrealistic expectations.
You are not responsible for their happiness.
No, you are not.
Okay.
You deserve to be treated with respect.
Right.
And that means protecting your emotional well-being. Even if it means saying no to them.
Which can be so hard.
Yeah, it can be really difficult.
Especially if you've been conditioned.
Especially if you've been people-pleasing.
Yeah, your whole life.
Your whole life.
To put everyone else first.
Yeah, but Gibson emphasizes that saying no.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you don't love them.
Right.
It simply means you're honoring your own limits.
Yeah.
You're asserting your own autonomy.
It's about having self-respect.
Yes, and she gives some great examples in the book of how to say no gracefully without getting sucked into their drama.
Right.
So, for example, you can state your position very calmly and firmly.
Right. So if your parent's pressuring you to do something that you don't want to do, you could say something like, I understand that you're disappointed, but I've already made other plans. Or you could say, I appreciate your concern, but I'm comfortable with my decision.
Right. It's about not getting defensive.
Yeah.
It's about detaching from their emotional reaction and staying grounded in your own truth.
Right.
Now, sometimes setting boundaries might even mean limiting contact with them.
Okay, that's a big one.
Yeah, that's a big one.
It can be really hard to do that.
It can.
Especially with family.
But it might be necessary.
Yeah.
Especially if the relationship is consistently draining you.
If it's toxic.
Yes. And this doesn't mean cutting them off completely.
Right.
It just means creating some distance.
Right.
To allow yourself to heal.
Yeah.
To recharge.
Yeah.
So you can come back to the relationship from a stronger place.
And even if you don't limit physical contact,
yeah,
you can create emotional boundaries by choosing not to engage in their drama or take on their baggage.
It's not your responsibility to fix their problems, to manage their emotions.
You are not responsible for their feelings.
You are not.
Yeah.
So beyond setting boundaries, Gibson also gives us some really practical advice for managing those day-to-day interactions.
Because let's face it, those can be pretty tricky.
They can be very challenging.
Especially if you're used to, falling into those old patterns of behavior.
Exactly.
So what are some of the things that she recommends?
So one of the techniques is called sidestepping.
Sidestepping? What is that?
So sidestepping is about recognizing when you're being pulled into a battle that you can't win.
Yeah.
And then choosing to disengage.
So they're trying to bait you.
Yes, they're trying to get a rise out of you.
Yeah.
And the best response is often no response.
Just walk away.
Don't engage.
Okay.
She suggests using slippery, non-committal responses.
Like what?
You could say, that's interesting.
Okay.
You could be right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what you mean.
So you're not feeding the drama.
You're not feeding the drama llama.
Love it.
Right. You're just not giving them what they want.
Okay.
Now, another technique is to actively change the subject.
Okay.
Or introduce a new topic.
Like you're redirecting a toddler.
Yes, exactly.
Who's fixated on a certain toy.
You're just gently steering the conversation in a different direction.
Okay.
And you might need to get creative.
Yeah.
Sometimes she even suggests using fantasy techniques to detach emotionally during a difficult interaction.
Like what? Give me an example.
So, for instance, you could imagine that you have a protective shield around you.
Oh, I like that.
Right, that's deflecting all of their negativity.
It's like a force field.
Yes, it's like a force field.
Okay.
And she also suggests using humor as a coping mechanism.
Okay.
Finding ways to lighten the mood, to take back some of that power.
Right, don't let them bring you down.
Don't let their negativity drag you down.
Now, I know some of these techniques might sound a little manipulative.
They might.
But it's important to remember that we're not trying to manipulate our parents into changing.
You can't change them.
Yeah, you can't.
These techniques are about protecting yourself.
Right, protecting your own energy.
Yes, it's about self-preservation.
It's about setting those boundaries and creating that space where we can interact with them without completely losing ourselves.
Without sacrificing your well-being.
Yeah.
Now, in addition to all of those strategies for managing the interactions, Gibson also emphasizes the importance of mental clearing.
Mental clearing.
And self-validation.
Okay, what is mental clearing?
So mental clearing is about recognizing those negative beliefs that you might have internalized from your childhood.
Oh, yeah.
These are the voices in your head that say you're not good enough, not worthy.
Not lovable.
Not lovable.
All those things.
Yes.
And that can be a lot of stuff to unpack.
It can be a lot of baggage.
Yeah. It's like weeding a garden.
I love that analogy.
Yeah. Pulling out all those weeds.
Yeah, all those toxic thoughts.
That are choking your growth.
Yes, you have to get rid of them.
Yeah. And I think the important thing to remember there is that their judgment of you is not the truth.
It's not the truth.
Right.
It's just their perspective.
It's their limited perspective.
Yeah, and it's often clouded.
Clouded by their own baggage.
By their own issues.
Their own stuff.
Exactly.
And so that's where self-validation comes in.
Yes, self-validation is crucial.
Okay.
It's about learning to be kind and compassionate towards yourself.
Yeah.
To counteract all of those feelings of shame and unworthiness.
So you're giving yourself the love and acceptance that you didn't get from them.
That you didn't get from your parents.
Yeah.
And it's about recognizing your inherent worth.
Yeah.
And celebrating your unique qualities. So you're shifting from a place of self-criticism to a place of self-compassion.
Like you're becoming your own best friend.
Yes, exactly. Your own biggest cheerleader.
So all of this leads to a really important question, which is, what does a healthy relationship with yourself look like?
That's the ultimate goal, isn't it?
It is.
It's not just about surviving.
Right.
It's about thriving.
Yeah.
It's about creating a life that's filled with joy, authenticity, and genuine connection.
Yeah. And according to Gibson, it starts with self-care, self-compassion,
Right.
and honoring your own inner world.
You have to prioritize your own well-being, both physically and emotionally.
Right.
And that means listening to your intuition, following your passions, and making choices that align with your values.
Not based on fear or obligation.
Because you should.
Right.
But because you want to.
It's like you're finally becoming the author of your own story.
You're taking back control of your narrative.
Yeah.
And that ties into this concept of emotional autonomy.
Okay.
Which is the ability to make choices.
Yeah.
Based on your own values, not out of fear or obligation.
Okay.
So you're breaking free from those old unhealthy patterns.
Right.
And creating a life that truly reflects who you are.
That's awesome.
And what you desire.
And one of Gibson's key messages in the book is that you don't have to meet those unrealistic expectations.
You don't have to live up to their standards.
Of an EI parent.
Exactly.
You deserve to have relationships that are mutually respectful and fulfilling.
You deserve to be happy.
And I think that's such a powerful message for anyone dealing with this.
It's a reminder that healing is possible.
Yeah.
That growth is a lifelong journey.
Yeah.
And that we have the power to choose love, connection, and joy, even in the face of difficult circumstances.
So we've talked about what it means to have an emotionally immature parent. We've talked about those different types.
Different types.
Of EI parents. And we've talked about some powerful strategies for taking back your power.
Right. Setting boundaries.
Yeah.
Managing those interactions.
We've explored that drama triangle.
Yes.
And the importance of cultivating a healthy relationship.
With yourself.
With ourselves. But now I want to know, like, what happens when we actually start to implement these things?
What does it look like in real life?
What does it look like to reclaim our emotional autonomy?
Right.
So we've been talking about what it means to grow up with emotionally immature parents and all that. But now I'm curious, like, what happens when we start putting these strategies into practice? Like,
yeah, it's a journey. It's not like you just arrive at a destination.
Yeah.
It's different for everyone.
Right.
But what I've found is that as you start to, set those boundaries and manage those interactions better and really start prioritizing your own well-being, there's this amazing shift that starts to happen.
Okay.
You start to feel lighter, more grounded, more in control of your own life.
Yeah. It's like you're breaking free from those invisible chains.
Yeah, exactly.
That have been holding you back.
It's like you can finally breathe.
And you're not just reacting to their drama anymore.
Right.
You're choosing how you want to respond.
You're taking back your power.
Yes.
You're realizing that you have choices. You don't have to be...
And, one of the things I love about Gibson's book is that it doesn't just focus on, like, surviving these relationships.
It's not about just surviving.
It's about thriving.
It's about thriving in spite of them.
Yeah.
It's about creating a life that is truly joyful and fulfilling, regardless of your parents' limitations.
Yeah, that's where the real magic happens, right?
That's where the magic happens.
Like, when you focus on building that healthy relationship with yourself, everything else starts to fall into place.
It really does. You attract healthier relationships.
Right.
You pursue your passions with more confidence. You just feel a deeper sense of inner peace.
And purpose.
Yes.
And you're finally stepping into your authentic self.
Yes, you're becoming who you were meant to be.
Right. And one of the things that Gibson gives us in this book that I think can really help with this process is she calls it the Bill of Rights for adult children of emotionally immature parents.
Oh, yes, the Bill of Rights.
I love this.
It's so empowering.
It is.
It's like a declaration of independence from all of those old limiting beliefs.
That we've internalized from childhood.
Right. It's a reminder that we are worthy of love, respect, and happiness.
No matter what.
Regardless of our parents' emotional maturity.
Yeah. And she covers so many important areas.
She does.
Like the right to have your own feelings, the right to set boundaries, the right to make your own choices.
The right to say no.
The right to live a life that is true to yourself.
Yes.
It's such a powerful reminder that you have a choice.
You do.
And how you relate to your parents.
You don't have to stay stuck in those old patterns.
And she also acknowledges that sometimes the healthiest choice might be to limit contact.
Right.
Or even end the relationship.
It's not always easy.
It's not.
But sometimes it's necessary.
But you don't have to tolerate toxicity.
No, you don't.
Even from family.
Even from family.
And it's not selfish to prioritize your own happiness.
It's not selfish at all.
It's essential.
It's essential for your well-being.
It's like you can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly.
You got to take care of yourself.
You have to take care of yourself first.
Before you can show up for other people.
Yes.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a little challenge.
Okay, I like it.
Take a look at Gibson's Bill of Rights and ask yourself, what is one right from this list that I'm ready to start claiming in my own life?
Which one resonates with you the most?
Yeah, which one feels like the key to unlocking greater peace, freedom, and fulfillment?
It could be the right to say no.
Yeah.
The right to express your feelings honestly. The right to create a life that brings you joy.
Yeah. Whatever it is, take that step.
Take that step.
However small it might seem.
Because those small steps can lead to big changes.
They really can.
Yeah.
And remember, healing is possible.
Healing is possible.
Growth is a lifelong journey.
It is.
And you are worthy of a life.
You are worth
filled with love, joy, and authentic connection.
Absolutely.
We encourage you to check out Gibson's book.
Yeah, it's a great resource.
For more on this.
Lots of great information.
And to continue on this path of self-discovery and empowerment.
Yes, keep going.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It was a pleasure being here.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep diving deep